It's top of my list. Okay, 6:06, we're gonna call this meeting to order. Molly, would you like to do roll call?
Yes. Chair Chastain,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Steeman,
Here.
Commissioner Donnan, he's here, Commissioner Monfort,
Here.
and Nelson and Casey are not present.
What happened, Molly?
You're there, Dave.
We hear you.
All right.
Cool. Moving on to item number 2, the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes. Do we have any motions?
I move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
Thank you, Dave. Any discussion? Okay, anybody opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes 4-0-0, or I guess 2 are absent. Doesn't matter, there's only 4 of us here. Okay, item number 3, public hearing item, climate action plan update. So Ryan, we're gonna, or Molly or Brendan, is Ryan taking over first?
Yes.
Ryan, okay, floor is yours.
Awesome. I am just going to run us through a summary of the comments we got back from public during the public comment period. So I'll share my screen for a minute. Can you guys see that all right?
You want to put it in presentation mode?
Yep.
No.
All
Looks
right.
good.
So kind of just an update or reestablish where we're at. We've got the CAP update draft done and the update ISND, and those both went out for comment period over the last couple of weeks. 3 major areas where we got feedback, kind of general feedback on some just inconsistencies or minor typos that we need to correct. There was some feedback on the bike ped section of the plan, and then a couple of comments on the electrification measures. So I'll kind of run through those. And then based on those comments, we'll be making some minor updates to the draft. And then based on the recommendation today from the CAC, will be then moving forward to City Council for hopeful adoption. So I said the first kind of bucket of comments we got back were just some minor typos, try as we might. It's a long document. There's a couple of things we need to fix and some things we can do for clarity. I think there's one duplicate action. Need an appendices for the table of contents, adding a list of acronyms, abbreviations, and definitions, and then making sure all the footnotes and links work. So that's something we'll run through before the final goes, just to kind of clean everything up. And then on the bike ped plan, we did receive some really great feedback. There was kind of a concern from 1 or 2 commenters that the mode shift wasn't aggressive enough. So recommendation to bump that up. Really what we based our measures and actions off of is the bike ped plan. So there will be opportunity in the future, revisions to that plan to continue to, add to this and make these numbers more aggressive. But as it is now, being consistent with those plans. And then I think there were some comments around prioritizing safe bike lanes, which I think we do. And that could be something that maybe we just call out more clearly. There's a good bit of that in the bike ped plan. And then addressing bicycle theft. There was a comment around contextualizing bike lane costs, which I think is a good one and something that we can add into the technical appendix or maybe in the document itself. Just calling out how much it costs to build a new road or even maintain a road to kind of give a context. I know like $1 million a mile seems like an astronomical amount to a lot of people, myself included, but maybe couching that a little bit with how much it costs just to maintain and build new roads in general, I think could be helpful. And then some more promotion of virtual work in place and commuting. especially for the city to kind of lead by example and reduce VMT was another comment we got from kind of in this bike ped area. The other place where we got a few comments, but less, were around electrification. A little bit, some comments around just clarifying the discussion around electrification and the grid and HVAC, so kind of how those things work together. So I think there's maybe some clarification we can add in there or some additional references to kind of help that out. And then some comments, particularly from the CBA or the Chico Builders Association around permit streamlining and making it a little bit easier to do EV chargers and electric construction. And that's something I think the city is definitely open to, but likely those types of details would get worked out during the actual ordinance development. So I think those are kind of included, not specifically, but will be worked out as the ordinance gets developed in the future. And that was really kind of what we heard from the community. So in general, pretty focused feedback on the bike ped, I think, is where we got most of our comments. And I think there's some things we can do there with the draft just to add some clarity and specification there.
Great, thanks, Brian. Kirk, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the little hand go up. I didn't know how that thing worked. Anyway, you know, Tom Barrett he wrote almost as many comments. It was as long as your report almost. And do you think that most of the stuff that he's offering is going to have to be handled during the implementation phase of this? He also asked the question, what if the city council doesn't pass any of this? I mean, we make our recommendation and the city council says no. And this goes back to an earlier comment that he made where he pointed out that our progress from, you know, over the, you know, during the sustainability committee, a whole lot of it was due to the state actions. It wasn't due to anything that happened in Chico, right? And so are we just going to rely on the state preempting us if the city council doesn't pass any of this? Is that what's happening?
Well, first of all, how can we, he asked a question, what if? I guess we'll answer that when we get to that time.
Yeah.
Kirk, they're aware that it's coming to them. I think it's a balanced approach, and I'm hopeful that they will support it. So that kind of, he opened a series of questions based on an initial assumption. I don't believe that initial assumption is accurate, so we'll have to go from there.
Well, the initial assumption was that, you know, we'd made great progress. Well, we didn't make great progress. The state made great progress.
Well, I don't know if I agree 100%.
Well,
we're going to see the biggest bites of the apple come from major actions by the state or potentially the federal government. That's just a matter of fact. So that just has to be. And then we do our part locally to add on to that. So what he stated is accurate, but obvious. I don't think it's anything that suggests that we're not doing our job.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. That's what a lot of the subsequent questions raised was, are we doing our job? I mean, we didn't do detailed enough analysis of a lot of these things to do any kind of good. And I mentioned the bike, I mean, because Ryan mentioned it, you know, like the bike ped suggestions that he made, the kind of shelters that the bike program needed to, the bus program, the B-line needed to install. I mean, they needed to be safe. They needed more bike racks. They needed lights. They needed charging stations. I mean, is all that stuff come in the ordinance later?
Well, I mean, a lot of that is covered in the bicycle master plan, which is essentially the recommendation that we're making with the measure is to implement the bike plan. And so, you know, by implementing the bike plan, we're implementing a 40-page document that addresses a whole host of bike infrastructure needs and improvements.
Okay.
Will be my response there.
And then as it relates to BCAG, I mean, there are policies and goals and actions to continue to work with them, but we can't just impose it upon BCAG. Do everything and do it now and do it perfect. So it's more of a ongoing process.
Okay. Okay.
So, what I think we need to do is discuss as commissioners, and then we'll go to, public hearing, and we'll open that for any of the members of the public that would like to have comments, and then we'll come back and discuss it again as commissioners. So Kirk, are there other things that immediately you wanted to discuss right off the bat?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I would have kind of liked, I mean, given a lot of those comments, I was thinking that, okay, we passed the negative deck and the initial study and the negative deck, and then beef up the report a little bit before we made a recommendation to the city council. I mean, that's what I
I'll
was
let
dividing
Brian
the motion.
respond.
But you're arguing that no, we shouldn't do that.
Well, no, it's your prerogative, Kirk, to provide guidance and questions, and
Yeah.
but it's not a given. There's no requirement. His comments to me are more. Well, first of all, I would think we'd all agree it would have been nice if he would have come along on the journey with the last year of public input and engagement. And so, but that's fine. Like we were discussing earlier in the meeting, this thing's not adopted until it's adopted. I think his comments fall into a number of categories: typos, things he thinks are important, then just lots of questions. And I think we've highlighted a lot of those questions might be answered when more robust things are developed, like the active transportation plan or some other initiatives or an ordinance. So hopefully he'll engage at that time and have his voice heard and make sure that those things are to his satisfaction, or at least that his voice is heard. And then there are some other ones where I think he's just saying, do more.
Oh, yeah.
And that's his prerogative as well. And you guys can bite on some of those things if that's important to you. But, we've been through a fairly robust process, engagement, heard feedback, gotten your feedback, gotten comments. So I'm just going to leave it out there like that. When you say beef up the report, you mean the staff report or the climate action plan itself?
Well, the climate, I mean, Ryan covered some of that stuff. I mean, under fix the typos and stuff, and it's pretty clear that you really do need an appendix or something, a glossary of acronyms. I mean, I struggled through pages of this stuff trying to figure out, like, what was an EV, service system. I mean, there was a couple that I had a really hard time figuring out.
And I think that was heard, and I think that'll go in the climate action plan before it goes to council.
Yeah, okay.
I
Yeah,
do
so-
see Dave's hand, or I'm sorry, Kirk.
Yeah, no, I mean, that beef up, that's in part of what I had in mind.
Yeah. I agree.
And so those are the kinds of things that you can make a recommendation to the group and see if people will agree and support what you're suggesting. And then that's what will happen. And that can be part of your recommendation to do that on its way to the climate or to the city council.
Okay. Mark had his hand up.
I think Dave.
Do you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I had two opinions. One on the Pete Giampoli letter. I thought too much emphasis on his part was put on residential rather than business, and I think it should be a shared responsibility instead of dumping it on the public on residential homes based on his letter on the electrification. And the second thing is, I thought that one of the people that, and I can't tell you the name, but there was a couple of them having to do with a cheaper alternative with the painted bike path. What would you call that, identification? I thought that was a great idea. One thing about that, though, as many people that she said that would participate in it, I think her numbers were a little high, but still, I think that it was a great suggestion. And lastly, I was wondering why, as when the consultant writes this stuff up, why wasn't some of that stuff actually put in there to begin with? Why did it take somebody from the outside to put it in there? But you might have answered my question by saying this is, it's a document that's going to have a little life and it'll change later on.
Yeah,
That's it?
Yeah.
thank you. Oh, I was gonna offer something, sure, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just that some of the details as it relates to bike infrastructure would, I think, again, would find itself, and I believe it is contained at some level, maybe not to the specificity of this comment, in the bike plan. So we don't want the climate action plan, we don't want the tail wagging the dog, I guess. My point is,
Right.
this is the bigger plan, kind of saying, do that, do this. And then the details as it relates to that kind of infrastructure and those kind of enhancements and improvements are found in other bigger plans that are focused on single topics. So I think folks are looking for the details for the actions to be found in the plan, the climate action plan, where I honestly believe they should be found more in these subsequent plans or these existing plans that may be updated in the future. And there are venues to kind of continue to get that feedback to the city and into the documents. And in fact, many of these folks are engaged on the bike ped committee or with Public Works and their efforts. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I think everyone thinks those were some pretty good suggestions.
I have one more comment on that is I've brought this up in the past, but it seems to me that that the education system, whether it be Chico State or the Chico Unified School District, could be a significant participant in the climate action plan when it in different, whether it be transportation, waste, and biking, because so many of the parents, I mean, if you drive around any school at 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, or from 2 o'clock to 3:30 in the afternoon, parents are picking up kids or buses, or where the bike plan and transportation and even the waste element. I didn't really see that in the climate action plan addressing that, and maybe that gets addressed later. Maybe I missed it.
It's called out as, those are stakeholders, right? So
Okay,
they're the
thank you.
responsible parties, right? The city and the city departments are responsible for these measures and actions. And then there's a whole host of stakeholders attached to each one of them, right? So Chico State, Chico Unified,
CARD.
Chico Velo, CARD, right? There's a lot of stakeholders that come with each one of the measures and actions, but they're not necessarily responsible parties, right?
Right.
So yeah, they are going to be integral into meeting these goals, but I think that's covered in the climate action plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Mark, any discussion before we open it up for public comments?
Well, I guess kind of in comment to my fellow commissioners, a lot of the comments that we got, especially from the building commission, don't seem to recognize the seriousness of the problem and the kind of the role that we play in it. And one of the things I always like to remind folks is that they've done the math, and 50%, over half of the emissions ever emitted by humans have been emitted since 1990 or 1989, if we want to be specific. So the lifestyle that a lot of these folks want to maintain is the exact lifestyle that got us into the problem, and harshly so. The building ideas and the building plans and the general plans of that area are what got us into the trouble. So it's hard to hear then that we want to keep just doing it cost effectively the way that it is. But I also have to lovingly push back at my friend Brendan and say that no, we did look at the Sustainability Task Force, did look at the Climate Action Plan, and we really couldn't find any measures that led to the decreases that we see. And so it hasn't really been city action. And so I guess that's the difficulty of all of this, is that, I could see the city adopting this plan, and I can see somewhat moving forward with the measures, and we can fight over them in different series of plans, but it's not going to get us where we need to go, and it's clearly not enough. We don't have that much time to wait to get to zero. And I guess that's my biggest regret about this plan, is it doesn't have us a path to zero. and it doesn't really identify those barriers to getting to zero. So we could do all kinds of things that are going to keep us from getting to zero before we realize we've done the things that kept us from getting to zero. And so in that, this, you know, I'm going to support it. We have to do this. We have to do as much as we can. But the sad thing is this really isn't a family-friendly plan. This isn't a plan that inspires people to have children in Chico. So that's not funny.
Well,
Kurt.
yeah.
That's not funny. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it, and I will be making a motion for us to approve it.
I'm going to go ahead and reserve my comments until we hear from the public. So it looks like we only have one member of the public. Kate, you have 3 minutes if there's anything that you'd like to share regarding this agenda item.
Thank you. I hate it when I'm the only one.
Well, thank you for being here, first of all.
So let's see, Kate Layden, I am Executive Director of Chico Builders Association. So you got our comments. We do think it's pragmatic. There is just a ton of information that's coming out at the state level with the decarbonization workshops that are going on. Speaking as Kate Layden, the citizen, you know, what I see so lacking is training for contractors and even our building departments on you know, how to install this stuff, how the appliances work, how to sell the appliances, how to make them desirable. I think that comes out in the Energy Commission workshops also. So I would just encourage anything that we can do to help contractors understand the power of the appliances and benefits, and then how to install them and maintain them would be huge. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kate. And again, thank you for always being here. It's really nice to have you and your perspective here. So thank you. And I completely agree with your comments. Regarding the comments that were submitted by the Chico Builders Association, I do want to say that I agree with these comments, and that I think these comments, while I don't necessarily feel like they need to be addressed in the plan itself, I'm comfortable moving forward with the plan as it is. What I think is going to happen with these specific measures that are called out is these are going to be addressed in the ordinance development process, right? So as the, oh, excuse me, I was supposed to close public comment. Thank you, Mark. we'll close public comment now. So I think as these ordinances are developed, that's when we'll have further and deeper conversations about what the language is in these ordinances and exactly what these ordinances should look like. So I want to say that, you know, again, I'm in support of adopting and moving forward with this climate action plan as is, with the recommendations or the bullet points that Ryan presented tonight, the things you already know you need to fix, like the duplications and the typos and the appendices and the abbreviations and these other things. I think everything that you captured on that slide are things that I wanted to see before I'm comfortable fully adopting it. But that this isn't restrictive, right? We are not restricted to what's included in this climate action plan. There's nothing stopping any of us from doing more, right? There's nothing that's stopping us from organizing workshops or training sessions or providing the tools to the people selling appliances, right? We can always do more than what's included in this climate action plan. And so I just want to make that very clear to all of us. And I know, I feel like I know that you guys know that, but I feel like I needed to state that. So with that, any other discussion about the climate action plan, public comments, anything before we look for a motion?
Mark said he would make the motion, or he can do it, or I can do it.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read this one. I move that the Climate Action Commission adopt resolution number 21-01, recommending the City Council adoption of an initial study and negative declaration and approval of the Climate Action Plan update.
Thank you, Mark. Should we have a second?
come on, Kirk.
Kirk, are you gonna be our
Second.
second? Well, thank you, Kirk. Okay, now we'll have further discussion about the motion. Any discussion about passing this resolution? Okay, I wanted everybody in favor. I see 4 hands. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. I'm excited about this plan. And like I said, this doesn't restrict us. We can still do whatever we want to continue to address climate action. And we all know that we need to do that with urgency. So thank you all. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, which is business from the floor. Kate, anything you'd like to talk about that's not on the agenda?
Thank you. No comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
I wanted to respond to something in the letter that came from Christie and Polly. And that was they didn't want just cost effective. They wanted it to be cost neutral, which means that if it saves them money, they don't want to do it. I thought that was a slip up.
Thanks, Kirk. Item number 5 is reports and communications. Oh, Kirk, do you have a report communication?
No. I meant to put my hand down.
Oh,
What
okay.
the hell's going on here?
Here, I'll lower it for you.
For those that have been tracking, they, at the last council meeting, finally got to appointing some boards and commissioners that we needed for the airport, architecture review board, and what was the other board?
Parks and playgrounds.
Climate action.
No, they haven't done climate action, but that's because there are some, the way it's set up, there's some individual appointments. So Debbie needed to get the new council members that have been seated to look and review the previous tapes of the interviews that took place for those positions. So that will be coming back at the next meeting. Finally, the Climate Action Commission will be rounded out with 7 members. Well, it's at least identified on the agenda for the next council meeting. So just want to make sure folks knew that. And that's the reason it wasn't done at the same time as these other boards and commissions, because I guess my understanding from Debbie is there are individual appointments and the new board members or council members had not weighed in or heard from those folks that had previously done interviews.
Okay, well, I look forward to the next council meeting. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, let me lower my hand. Is this the last time we see Ryan? Should we say goodbye? I mean, I just, it's one of the things is that, I want to thank him for all the work that he's done, all the great effort all of them have done. And though I've been a harsh critic, they're doing great work. I think it's part of my job to be the harsh critic. But anyway, thank you. Before we get out of here, I want to say thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Right, and Ryan, please communicate a thank you to the rest of the RINCON team. I know there were a lot of other people that put in a lot of time and effort in this. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
I agree 100%. And, there will be opportunities in the future to update our plan. That's already kind of embedded in there. I don't think it's intended that RINCON thinks they're guaranteed that role, but I think the working relationship we've had with them have been incredible, and the knowledge that they've brought to this has been helpful to the whole team and to me individually. So I agree with everything. Thanks, Mark. That was very kind.
Well, that was the report and communication I was going to have. Thanks, Mike. No, I'm just kidding. Any other reports or communications?
Well, Mark raised a good question about the next meeting. I'll work with Molly because I think it might be a good opportunity. We'll have a new Civic Spark fellow on board. We're going to continue the work that Austin initiated. So maybe come back and give a little update on the efforts to do the adaptation resiliency, the things that need to be incorporated in our safety element, where we are, the schedule, how we're thinking about proceeding. We all need that. We need to be pushed. There's things that can take our time away and deviate from what things that are important. And so we need to kind of reassess where we are. And so I think that's one thing that we'll bring back at the next meeting.
All right.
Yeah, so Brendan, can you also what I heard today is that there's all of these other plans that now have to be in some sense updated because of the climate action plan, or the specifics will come in the climate action plan and such. Can you figure out which one of those are our purview? I imagine there's some that are other places' purview that we would be inappropriate to wade in on, but in the matter of time, I don't see why we would wait much longer. If we have to start implementing this stuff into other plans, we should start using the time we have to identify that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can take a look. So there's some things like the bike plan that was recently adopted. I think it was within the last year and a half. I think in the future, that is something that should, when updated again, at least stop at the Climate Action Commission. So yeah, I'll give that some thought.
And along the lines is that, you know, there was a lot of suggestions, that very good suggestions that were made, that were, it was kind of like, okay, and I agree with you, this is the big plan, there's then smaller plans, but this is the crack right here, right? That everything falls through between this plan and, oh, we'll get to the next plan 3 or 4 years down the road. And again, we do not have that much time. I just want to remind everybody, to tell you why, I have to talk to 20-year-olds about this every day, and it's getting really hard. So I'm really motivated right now to keep moving forward on this. So if we could find ways to start getting some of those details and saying, oh, if we're going to make it to this, we need to do this, this, and this, I would find it really helpful if we could keep moving forward on those things.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Yeah. I don't know what's in the bike plan, for example, but one impediment to doing anything about upping the proportion of people who ride bikes is that the streets are so just terrible. Now, I noticed that the plan that we've just approved and recommended to the council talks about paving the shoulders, but I assume that means the graveled shoulders, so that we, you know, extend the pavement all the way to the corners. But a few years ago, I went up to the planning department, where I still knew some people, and I suggested that they just buy one of those things, one of those pavers that just paves shoulders. That's it. Don't worry about the streets.
Yeah,
One incentive would be that you just pave the shoulders.
right. The city's bike ped work group is on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, as the staff changes in the Public Works Engineering Division. If we can get that bike ped work group back up and functioning, I see that as an opportunity to kind of collect this type of community input and start to make solid recommendations to, you know, city staff, to appropriate divisions, whether that's planning, engineering, or public work, or maintenance. I see that as a venue and a possibility that this commission should be playing a role in. And so at maybe a future meeting, we can discuss some of these types of ad hoc groups that we discussed early on as the commission was being formed, but you know, creating some of these more purposeful groups with, say, the Planning Commission or the Parks and Playgrounds Commission, to really start to get into some of the nuts and bolts of some of these specific action items.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Any other reports or communications?
For me.
Okay, well, Ryan, thanks again for everything. It's been a very interesting year and a half. I mean, maybe we'll see you in person someday.
I
Although
hope so.
it's kind of nice that you're not, you know, vehicles mile travel to get up here. So thank you truly to you and Rincon and the rest of the team. And thank you, commissioners, tonight for what I think is a very exciting meeting. We've all worked really hard to get to this point. So thank you all for your contributions. And Kate, thank you for always being here. And Brendan and Molly, you guys rock. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, 6:41. We will reconvene probably on Zoom Thursday, October 14th. So I will see hopefully everybody but Ryan.
Thank you.